very special day today. Amid an almost complete US television blackout, South Africa presented its case against Israel in The Hague, the International Justice Court, accusing them of genocidal acts on their war on the in their war on the Gazan people. Very interesting stuff that we're gonna have to look at. Very wild stuff going on. What happened in the US? Nothing. Anyways, nice to see you guys. Hope you all are doing well. You have to come down. The TV. I don't mean like a literal black. I mean like they weren't covering something. Not like TV shut down. Nice to see you all. Nice to see you all. Crazy stuff going on. ICJ. Yeah. International Court of Justice. It's crazy stuff going on. Wild stuff going on. So yeah, we have that to talk about some other stuff. Wait, are we dropping frames? Oh, we were dropping frames. 7,000? Really? At the beginning of the stream? Well, at least it's over now, but like, holy. Yeah, okay, now I see. Reload if you're seeing this and there were some drop frames, reload. What the heck? What the heck? Oh my goodness. Oh no. Wait. Oh no, please Lord, don't do it. I'm looking at these drop frames, it's pretty crazy. I gotta keep an eye on this. All I wanna do is stream. Oh no, it's happening. Oh no, there's more. Please Lord. Really? I tried to stream a little bit later to get away from the possibility of dropping frames, and we dropped more frames. Really? And I streamed earlier today and it was perfectly fine. Perfectly fun. Everything was, I was vibing so hard. And now we've dropped 7,800 frames. Good Lord. We need to stop these people. Like, I've decided that I think I want to do a whole segment on Elon's unraveling his complete downturn. Yeah, those frames were found wanting. Hopefully if it continues, we'll have to push this to tomorrow, unfortunately. Oh, and as I speak, it continues. All right, I'd rather stop it now than, okay. It looks like we may not be able to. Well, I'm sorry everyone. Well, that sucks. It looks like we may not be able to continue with this. I just got here. Well, I just got here too. Stream's been live for 14 minutes and I'm already dropping a bunch of frames. Okay. Yeah, this, I don't know. I'm trying to wait it out. Hopefully it'll fix itself, but it just might not. Yeah, the frames keep non-framing. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. Chill. This is terrible. This is horrible. Yeah, it's only the percentage is actually only going up. Okay, now listen. I love you all. I don't think this is gonna work out. I'm gonna check the internet over some time and see if it gets better. But it seems like it might not be okay. You seem fine over here. I'm actively watching my frames disappear. So it might be fine over there for a bit, but it may get worse. Yeah, these frames are not framing. Listen, I love you all. Let's save this to like tomorrow 1 p.m. if this isn't going to work. Thanks for coming. Join the raid. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Thanks for coming. Join the raid. Join the raid. Great to see you. See you again. Another meme stream. Take care, everybody. Yeah, and then but music kicks in. Fuck you. You know what? He's actually leaving. I might actually the thing I don't want to, but with these frames dropping 12,000 frames in 16 minutes, I've dropped 1/5 of all of my frames that I've sent you guys so far. Like if any devices are connected, bro, it's like there's only a couple people in the only thing going on right now is my girlfriend's playing like TFT. That's it. She's literally playing Teamfight Tactics. That's the only thing going on right now in the entire house. It's literally like, listen, it's actually my ISP. There's like nothing I can do. Just here, we just have like, we don't have that many ISPs we can be a part of, and this one is just like all of them are just kind of ass, and they drop frames every now and again. It seems like it's stabilized. $12,400. It seems like it's stabilized. I don't think it doesn't look like it's continuing to get worse as of now. Let me check my speed test. Time to do a speed test. Let's run a quick little speed test, see where we are. See if it's actually stabilized. It's not that great. It's choppy, but it's up where it can be. We usually have like an upload of 30. Right now we have an upload of like 22. So it seems like it's kind of back for now. Is it better on your end? Are we still dropping frames? I haven't seen a frame drop yet. What do you guys think? We're back. It seems better. It's more stable. Are we still dropping frames? Is it better but still dropping frames, or is it like actually good? Is it actually fine? I'm waiting. No frames dropped yet. All right, great, perfect. No frames. What the fuck? I got an upload of 326. I live in Kentucky. You may have an up. You want a little bit of my internet? I mean, sure, if you can like hand it over. Not seeing any frame drops? Great, perfect. Like, listen, you might have 326 upload, okay? And I have like 26 and I have like 30 upload, but in my area, rent is also like $900 and for you it's 3,000. So, you know, just like all I'm saying is, you know, like it's important to take everything into account before we just start speaking. Ooh, thank you, Tyrannix. I appreciate you. Thank you for the gifted sub. Thank you. Thank you. All that matters is your charismatic talkies. Thank you. You're not wrong. Much love. Huge love. Thoughts on celebratory gunfire? You probably shouldn't. If there's people in the area, you probably shouldn't. Like, are you going to hit someone? Probably not. Is a falling bullet dangerous? Depends. Like, if we're just kind of vibing, then, you know, like if we're just kind of vibing out at like the, you know, at like a gun range pretty far away, maybe. But my freedom, okay, but my head without a bullet in it. You ever think about that? Nah. What if we shoot towards the ground? I think you should be really careful because I just think you should only shoot things that you mean to shoot. Okay? And I feel like the bullet might hit something. I don't know, what if the bullet hits a rock and then bounces somewhere and then hurts somebody? That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Be careful. You got some internet for me to download? Ah, let's go. Ah, huge W. Listen, liberal, your head is full of structural integrity. So hecking true, bestie. So hecking true. But anyways, one of the big things that we need to talk about today is South Africa bringing a genocide charge against Israel at the Hague, at the International Court of Justice at Hague. All right, this is a really large development. It's something that was reported on a little while ago that they were finally going to be doing that. South Africa released an 80-page report. I haven't been able to go through all of it, but I did skim it a bit, and they talked about some really important things. They brought up a lot of quotes from Israeli from people in positions of power, from the president to leaders of the IDF to IDF soldiers themselves, to Benjamin Netanyahu. A lot of people in very big places in power in Israel, Ben Gvir as well, were quoted saying things and doing actions that imply or just explicitly condone genocidal intent by the Israeli state. And so it was just kind of wild. Out of all the states in the world, it was South Africa, the one with a history of apartheid, of genocide. It's crazy, you know? And honestly, one of the biggest South Africans to ever exist, Elon Musk, didn't say anything about this. He's probably actually one of the biggest South Africans to ever exist, the richest South African to ever exist, right? The richest person to ever exist. Elon Musk did not have anything to say on it. He actually visited Netanyahu and Israel to give them a go-ahead with killing more Palestinians. Just to put this into perspective, a couple months after the war began and Israel's ground invasion, Israel has a couple days ago, Israel has finally killed 1% of all Palestinians. 1% of all Palestinians have died. And it hasn't even been a year, hasn't been half a year. 1% of all Palestinians have died. Over 20,000 civilians have been killed. Over 20,000 civilians have been killed by Israel. 20,000 in a couple months. More bombs dropped on Gaza than we did in an entire year when we were in Afghanistan. These are and just words by Israeli officials that they don't care about targeted attacks. They care about doing as much damage as possible. Oh, it's actually over 30,000. My numbers might be. The numbers move so quickly. Here, let me see. Let me check. It seemed, as I've seen it, I've seen numbers from places like Al Jazeera, ABC, CNN, Reuters saying that it's about 20, it's over 20,000. It's over 20,000 right now. Numbers don't mean shit. Wrong. Yeah, just surpassed 20,000 right now. And I want to look at some of the arguments that they made. We can't look at the whole thing because the entire opening arguments by South Africa is actually like 3 hours long. We really can't look at all of that, but there is some really important stuff that I want to show. There was an Irish lawyer and a South African lawyer who stood up to speak. Both of them spoke for about 30 minutes each, and we can get through at least a good chunk of both of those today, which I think would be great. Average IDF member, that is true. No, average IDF member he'd be torturing a Palestinian child right now. Musk is such a sniveling coward. He's just a loser. Born loser. No amount of money can make him not a loser. One thing that I want to see, this just came up. David Cameron. David Cameron used to be the prime minister of the UK. Is that right? Served as a foreign secretary. I feel like, wasn't he the prime minister? Or was he not? Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was the prime minister. He was the prime minister. But he's not anymore. He was a foreign, I want to see. I'm taking a look at this. I'm taking a look at everything just to make sure I got this right. Leader of the opposition, prime minister. He was the foreign secretary since 2023. Okay. He was prime minister from 2010 to 2016. Okay. Yeah. Oh, this is the guy that started Brexit, right? This is the guy that was the guy that started Brexit. And then 17 prime ministers later, the United Kingdom is almost completely destroyed. Oh, it's that guy. This guy's gonna go down in the history books as the guy who obliterated what was left of it, who obliterated what was left of the UK. And that's kind of hilarious. Yeah, the guy who gave into the far right and started the Brexit vote. Yeah, and then when the going got tough, he decided to get going. Crazy stuff. Just, if you ever wanted to see this guy get grilled, if you hate this guy and you ever wanted to see him get grilled, don't worry, everybody else did as well. So they dragged him in front of a select committee, and they started grilling him on Israel Gaza and asking him questions about it and about Israel's genocide of the Gazan people. And bro almost got broke in half. Look at this. It's pretty interesting stuff.
Make our case very vigorously, as I do. I mean, when I meet, for instance, South African foreign minister, or talk to them, I would say, look, of course, I want this conflict to end as soon as possible. I don't want to go on for a moment longer than necessary. But a ceasefire to work has got to be sustainable. That means you can't have Hamas in power, able to launch rockets, not releasing hostages. That has got to be dealt with. And I think you get...
On that, Foreign Secretary, do you believe that military intervention can defeat Hamas?
I think that what the Israelis are trying to do is they are trying to get rid of Hamas's ability
to
launch further attacks on Israel. I think you can do that.
No, their objective was to destroy Hamas. It's not to stop Hamas from shooting rockets. It's to destroy Hamas, because they're blowing up places that aren't places where Hamas is shooting rockets from. That's not their goal. It's to kill everybody who's affiliated with Hamas. That's their goal. It's their stated goal. Like, they've been stating this goal since the beginning of the war. Why in the world would you just pretend that's not what they're doing?
And one can disagree, and I would have differences with the way they've gone about it. Can you defeat an ideology through armed intervention? No, defeating an ideology is going to take a lot of other things, including progress towards a political solution to show that politics can work and deliver things. But I think if you take the argument there's nothing more that can be done militarily, you just have to freeze things where we are now, you've then got to make an argument, well, how do you get the remainder of Hamas out of Gaza, get rid of the rocket launchers, get rid of my challenge to those from the Global South or friends in Arab states is to say, okay, there's a ceasefire tomorrow. How do you get rid of Hamas's capacity to launch more rockets?
How will you know when that moment has come as British Foreign Secretary? And is it your hope that the UK will be voting for a ceasefire at the UN in the near future?
I would hope that we'll be voting. I mean, what we did is we defined what we wanted as a sustainable ceasefire. The Prime Minister said that at Prime Minister's questions, and within a few weeks that was adopted by the UN in Resolution 2720 with unanimous, well, not unanimous agreement because the United States didn't vote in favour, but without a veto. So that's our position. Yes, I look forward to the moment when this conflict is over. And of course, we spend a lot of time asking what is...
Wait a second. Is this true? I'm hearing a report. There are people saying that there's a news article out about Israel's military, about the IDF being commanded to use their Hannibal procedure, which means that they didn't want any Hamas militants to return to Gaza, even if they had hostages. So just they were given the green light to just kill anybody and everybody if they were near a Hamas militant. Okay. Wait, I'm not sure if that's true. Let's see. Whoops, sorry. Like I said yesterday, I'm still getting used to I'm still getting used to this I'm still getting used to this keyboard. So I may accidentally mute myself. The enter button and the back button is right next to my mute button. So cut me a little bit of slack. All right. Anyways. Article from the Cradle. All right. Israeli army ordered mass Hannibal directive on October 7th. An investigation from Israel's leading newspaper indicates Israel deliberately killed many of its own civilians and soldiers during Hamas's operation in Al-Aqsa flood to prevent them from being taken back to Gaza. So like just to prevent them from being taken captive, you just kill them instead. So to make sure no militants get back into Gaza, you just kill them and kill the hostages as well. The Israeli military implemented the Hannibal directive during Hamas's attack on October 7th, killing many of its own civilians and soldiers, according to an investigation by Israel's leading newspaper, I can't pronounce this, which will be published in full on January 12th. So that's tomorrow. So this is a leak right now. This is a leak right now. So we'll have to read the full paper when it comes out, if it comes out, but we'll see. The Hebrew edition of the paper wrote on the 11th that one of the revelations revealed in the investigation is that at midnight on October 7th, the IDF Israeli military ordered all of its combat units to practice the use of the Hannibal procedure, although without clearly mentioning this explicitly by name. The order was to stop at all costs an attempt for Hamas terrorists to return to Gaza, that is, despite the fear that some of them may have abductees, the paper wrote. The Times of Israel described the Hannibal procedure or directive as allowing soldiers to use potentially massive amounts of force to prevent a soldier from falling into the hands of the enemy. This includes the possibility of endangering the life of the soldier in question in order to prevent his capture. Previous Haaretz investigation of the directive concluded that from the point of view of the army, a dead soldier is better than a captive soldier who himself suffers and forces the state to release thousands of captives in order to obtain his release. During the October 7th attack, Hamas and other Palestinians successfully took some 240 Israeli soldiers and civilians from settlements known as kibbutzim, and military bases back to Gaza as captives. Hamas hoped to exchange them for thousands of Palestinians, including women and children held in Israeli prisons, Palestinian hostages, just so you know. Hamas used Toyota pickup trucks and motorcycles with which they entered Israel and stolen settlements, the captives that they brought back to Gaza. In the week after the attack, soldiers and elite units checked about 70 vehicles that were left in the area between the settlements and the Gaza Strip. These vehicles did not reach that did not reach Gaza because they're on their because they were because on the way they were shot by a combat helicopter, an anti-tank missile, or a tank. At least in some cases, everyone in the vehicle was killed. As journalist Dan Cohen reported, the Israeli military killed Efrat Katz, age 68, as she was being taken captive from a kibbutz to Gaza on a cart pulled by a tractor on October 7th. Her daughter, Doron Katz Asher, and two grandchildren, Raz, age 2, and Aviv, age 4, were also in the cart. Doron later told Israel's Channel 12 that the Israeli military opened fire on the tractor, injuring her two daughters and killing her mother. As previously reported by the Cradle, Israeli Air Force Reserve Colonel Nof Erez. Listen, these names are crazy, to me at least. I speak English. Described Israel's actions on the 7th as a mass Hannibal event in response to the use of the Apache helicopters and tanks. What we saw was a mass Hannibal. There are many openings in the fence, thousands of people in many different vehicles with hostages and some without, he told Haaretz. The revelation that the Israeli military informally issued a Hannibal directive raises many questions about the deaths of many Israeli civilians who were initially presumed to be taken captive on October 7th, but whose bodies were later discovered near the Gaza border fence. Yeah, I think that's a big thing. Yeah, I think that this is something that we've been seeing a lot, is that from October 7th onward, the amount of hostages and people taken ballooned and then shrunk. Right? Like now the number that you'll see a lot of people defending Israel will say is like 1,200 people were killed. But then what's the actual number is 800 civilians were killed and about 200 or so soldiers were killed that are claimed to be from Gaza militants, from like, you know, Hamas militants. But that number even keeps changing, especially as they went through all the things, all the tractors, all the cars, all the people that they shot. They realized that they killed I heard claims that they've killed a bunch of their own hostages and their own soldiers, specifically just so they won't be taken captive, because they didn't want to have to argue for them to be taken back. They didn't want to argue for them to be, you know, or haggle for them to be returned. So they just decided to kill them instead. That'd be the better option. When I was making videos about this topic, and when I make videos about this topic, I haven't said that. I didn't bring it up much. Well, I think I brought it up in the sense of it's something that I heard, but I had no clue if it was true or not. So I just said these are claims coming out. And it seems to have some truth behind it, but, you know, take it with a grain of salt. It seems like it's starting to come out that there's more and more information out, and now there's going to be a large article written about how Israel did in fact decide to kill many of its own civilians just so they wouldn't be taken hostage. It's possible. I mean, it's very possible that Israel has killed more of its own hostages than Hamas has at this point. He's openly trolling here with stupid arguments. Libs have taken up the whole chat. Can we put him in the timeout corner? Is he being a bad boy? I mean, you can just ignore them. You can just ignore them for now. That sounds bad. You've been censored by Antifa hackers. Good Lord, no. Please, Lord, no. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Anyways, back to this.
Israel should do next to bring this to an end, to finish, we should also spend a nanosecond saying if Hamas wanted, they could end this tomorrow. They could lay down their arms. They could leave Gaza. They are the ones prolonging this conflict. In many ways.
You've warned.
I don't know. I just don't believe that this is true. Like, I've heard people say that, like, oh, Hamas could just end the war by just like stop existing. But I just don't believe, I don't believe this is true. I don't think Israel would ever really stop bombing. I don't think they would really stop bombing until they feel personally satisfied, because they would just say that there are more Hamas militants out there. Their goal is to kill every single Hamas militant, right? Like, why in the world would they think that? Why in the world would they just be like, oh yeah, they're definitely telling the truth here? They would just keep bombing. I just don't believe that if there was a mass surrender by Hamas militants that they would just stop bombing it. For one, I think they would try to bomb the people surrendering, and then they would just keep bombing. They've displaced Gaza, which is the real objective. Yeah, 85% of the population in Gaza has been displaced so far. Ooh.
Against an unsustainable ceasefire that quickly collapses into further violence. But there's a strong feeling, I think, in the international community and in the public that the longer violence continues and the further peace is away, that we're going to struggle to get to peace.
I don't disagree with that. This you know, we don't.
There was a bit where the whole chat was responding. Yeah, like you don't have to respond to everybody saying something dumb. You could just ignore them too. You could just let them keep yapping. It's all right.
I don't want this to go on. No, what I'd say first of all, I would be in favour of humanitarian pauses, including right now. I mean, let's have another pause to try and get hostages out and to get more aid in. I'd be happy for us to do that now. What I'm saying about sustainable ceasefire is it does need Hamas to no longer be capable of launching attacks into Israel. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. And I hope that moment comes as quickly as possible.
Francis, just to take back for a moment, what is the UK's current legal position on whether or not Gaza is occupied?
Our position is that that Israel is fighting a campaign against Hamas. We have to check regularly whether that is in compliance with international humanitarian law and assess that. I don't think Israel regards itself as an occupying force, but whether that is correct, I would want to take legal advice, because this comes to this issue about aid, where I think Israel needs to do more, a lot more, to get more aid into Gaza, which perhaps we can come on to.
And forgive me, we know that Israel does not consider itself to be an occupying power, but British law currently does consider Gaza to be an occupied power. Can you, an occupied territory? Can you just confirm that on the record?
I don't know the precise legal definition of that. I'd have to go back and check.
Philip? I think we all know that the Foreign Office does know what the official legal position is.
We describe the territories as the occupied Palestinian territories, but
that's a different question.
That's a descriptor.
Yes.
Yeah.
We should give you a piece of written advice on the legal position.
I think.
Wait. We call them the occupied territories, but we don't know if they're actually occupied territories. That's what we just call them. Okay. Okay. All right. Sure. All right, buddy. Sure. Listen. I call her my wife. All right. I mean, that's just what I call her. Whether we're like actually married, you know, that's a whole nother question. I mean, come on. What are you talking about, man? What are you referring to? What are you even talking about? If you call them occupied territories, how do you not consider them occupied territories? You just like to call them occupied for fun, even though you disagree with that?
What the chair's asking is, do we consider Gaza to be occupied militarily at the moment? Is that what you're getting at?
I'm asking for the British government's legal definition, whatever they consider to be the terminology of you occupy, because as I understand it, there is no question that in law, under British law and according to the UN Security Council Relation 22334, on which we have based our legal position, Gaza is an occupied territory, and therefore from that, Israel does have obligations as an occupying power, whether or not they consider it to be or not. British law does state that, and I would consider it to be quite fundamental that we knew exactly from what premise we were operating when engaging in something so complex.
As you know, we refer to them as the occupied Palestinian territories, but obviously Gaza was left by Israel. But I think the question you're asking now is what Israel's done, is that technically an occupation, and therefore do they have legal obligation? The point I would make is, look, whether or not they are de jure...
Is this South Africa versus Israel stuff? No, this is Daniel Cameron, former Prime Minister of the UK and former Foreign Secretary in the UK, being grilled by a select committee on his personal opinions on what's going on in Gaza and Israel. So no, we're not there yet, but we're going to be watching that after this. He's not used to people pulling receipts on his ass. Yeah.
occupying, they are de facto occupying Gaza, and therefore, when it comes to this issue of aid delivery, we need them to do more. At the moment, we're at about 150 trucks a day getting into Gaza. We need to be closer to 500. Every day that
that's
we're
like
not
really
close
low.
to 500, we're going to have more people going hungry. We're going to have more people getting disease. There is a danger of there being really widespread hunger. At the moment, something like 90% of Gazans are getting less than one meal a day.
This meme is
and
very
so
real.
Wow, that's really bad. So you're telling me an entire like 2 million people or could be at risk of starving? That is total me when I'm not committing a genocide, okay? Just so you know.
Israel is a whole set.
I didn't even know that statistic. I'm glad we're taking a look at this because I actually didn't even know that statistic off the top of my head. That 90% of Gazans aren't even getting one meal a day. Are getting like one meal a day. Oh, wait, I want to hear that one more time.
Of there being really widespread hunger. At the moment, something like 90% of Gazans are getting less than one meal a day.
Oh, that's even worse than I thought. 90% of Gazans are getting less than one meal a day. You could easily be put into starvation. That's like 2 million people at the risk of starvation, is it not? Yeah, so Israel's stopping food from going into Gaza and constantly bombing them. And any gathering of Gazans is getting bombed. And so 90% of them are getting less than one meal a day to eat. And it's been months. You know, at some point, there's going to be pictures and videos of people just like laying dead in the street due to mass starve. It's going to look like the British. Oh my gosh, it's going to look like the British Raj. It's going to look like scenes of the street of like the streets during the British Raj. Epidemiologists are getting concerned that there's going to be it's Bengal famine. Oh my gosh, the America is helping British people do another Bengal famine, but this time in Gaza. They're gonna do it to the Palestinians. Are you guys ready for the Bethlehem famine?
And so I've set out with the Israelis a whole set of things that could happen, that they could do that would make a real difference. You know, make sure Kerem Shalom is open 7 days.
It's going to look like Auschwitz. Yeah, it's really curious how that works out, isn't it?
A week. Make sure.
I've actually seen pictures of, alleged pictures of Gazans who look like they came from Auschwitz already.
The Nitzana checking point is open 24 hours a day. Make sure the aid convoys that are coming across Jordan have unhindered access into Gaza. Look at opening the port of Ashdod so aid can arrive by sea, go from Ashdod either into Kerem Shalom or even better go into the Erez crossing. Crucially, none of these things will work unless inside Gaza you actually have UN personnel, trucks and fuel capable of taking the aid around Gaza. And again, only the Israelis can really fix that because there's a bunch of visa applications that are outstanding for people to be there. There's a need for armoured cars for that aid to be distributed and taken around with. And that needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed urgently.
I think I would also pay credit at this point to you, Foreign Secretary, for what the UK government has clearly done on aid. There is clearly much progress made as a result of that. But just for clarification, therefore, your words, Gaza is de facto occupied, and therefore Israel has obligations in occupying power, which you are saying today you accept, at least when it comes to
saying they have. I'm not a lawyer, so I need to be careful. I'm saying they have responsibilities. No, I'm saying they've got responsibilities to make sure that aid gets through. It's not solely them. There are also, I've been to El Arish myself. There are problems with Egyptian bureaucracy. There's problem with the lack of sort of overseeing logistics, working out what aid is going where. There are other bottlenecks, but fundamentally there are some things the Israelis need to do because ultimately they have a lot of responsibility for what is happening in Gaza. I'm not giving you a legal definition because I'm not a lawyer. This is a moral and political point.
Responsibilities.
They are not currently doing all they could be doing on aid, and therefore what they should be doing.
I want them to do more.
Moving to the conduct of the military operation,
I'm going to speed this up a little bit.
Your assessment of Hamas's current capability, how much it's been degraded, and what their intent is.
I have to be careful what I say, but I mean, I've seen figures suggesting that they have lost well over 50% of their capacity and capability in terms of being able to launch rockets and all the rest of it. I don't think I can go further than that. But their ability to launch rockets into Israel has been significantly degraded. But as we've seen, they have still launched rockets in recent days.
Wait a second. So you've killed 1% of all Gazans, completely leveled northern Gaza, and Hamas still has about 50% left power, 50% power left from like, and that's from the Israelis. And so that's like, so you should be cautious with those numbers. So let's just say like they have about 50% capacity left or capabilities left after killing 1% of Gazans. So what he's saying now is that to get to their goal, they have to kill at least, if they keep the same amount of deaths, if it stays consistent, they have to kill at least like 2% of the entirety of Gaza for them to, at least 40,000 people, about 45,000 people for them to reach their goals. They have to kill 45,000 people. Okay. Yeah, they should stop now.
The Israelis obviously said over the weekend that they'd now dismantled Hamas's military infrastructure in the north of Gaza. You touched on your answer to Dan about the need for pauses. Is that not perhaps an opportunity that we bring in a humanitarian pause in the north of Gaza? If Hamas has been dismantled, as the Israelis are saying they have succeeded in doing so, do we need to look at particular areas having humanitarian pause once it's appropriate? Otherwise, what is the objective currently in the north of Gaza as you understand it?
That's a very good point. I mean, what we have pushed for with Israel is to say consider humanitarian pauses. We haven't particularly focused on an individual area, but frankly, anything would help. When it comes to, there are still, most of the Gazans have moved from the north to the south, so it's more helpful to have a humanitarian pause covering the whole of Gaza, because then you can get to the aid where most of the people are. But frankly, anything would help. In fact, one of the issues we'd like the Israelis to look at is switching the water back on into northern Gaza, because that would make a difference. So all of these things, but that's a good thought. All of these
they don't even have water.
There has been no place that they could go as yet that was safe. So perhaps that provides an avenue. President Biden, as I'm sure you saw, I raised, the Prime Minister said that there has been indiscriminate bombings that have taken place. You warned on the 23rd of November that civilian casualties in Gaza were too high and that Israel must abide by international law. How have you, as far
somebody's
as
dying, man,
achieved a reduction in civilian casualties?
What we've done on every occasion of talking to, whether it's the Israeli Prime Minister or President or Minister Derma or Minister Gantz, who I spoke with recently, always make the point that, of course, we believe Israel.
They control all of their water. Interesting. Yeah, it's almost like they're basically occupied.
Humanitarian law. It should try and avoid civilian casualties, and we were very clear that they needed to do better in the south than they did in the north. They say today that they are moving from a sort of combat phase to more of a stabilization phase. I don't fully know what they mean by that, but we definitely want them to do everything they can to try to move.
I have no clue what they mean.
Less under threat.
And forgive me, there's some sort of phrase the US used, which I'm not going to quote accurately.
Why are you even here?
Friends in public, punches behind the scenes. Do we think the UK or the US, and obviously the US has taken the lead on then, have been unable to restrain Israel in any way in terms of the way that it has conducted its airstrikes?
I think it's a very difficult question to answer. I think that I'll answer a slightly different question, if I may. I think the relentless pressure that Israel.
I feel like the answer is no. If there's an answer like that.
Us and for Americans and others, I think that did make a difference. They eventually relented. I would hope that what we've said, because we are a friend of Israel and we have been a helpful friend in many ways, on many occasions.
I hope they stopped killing so many civilians. Anyways, they should keep bombing. Okay. All right.
I hope they listen.
Sure, buddy.
And so forgive me, when I asked the Prime Minister about
in
the same
jail.
topic, he said that he hasn't seen Israel's targeting. Have we asked to see Israel's targeting process or procedures?
I haven't seen it.
Have we asked to see it?
I haven't asked to see it. I don't think that that's something
I don't care, he says.
Share with us.
They would share their collateral damage percentage that they're working to if we were asking them to do so.
Well, they've shared that in terms of they point out, but one can say this is arguable, that they argue their collateral damage percentage compared with other conflicts shows that they are taking the issue of civilian casualties very seriously.
So maybe I could get.
But I think that's a difficult, that is a difficult one to.
I think it's a good way of holding them to account. And realistically, the UK normally operates. Forgive me, Royston might correct me, but I believe the UK normally operates around a 3% collateral damage percentage. There was obviously ministerial sign-off for particular airstrikes where there may be requirement for a greater risk factor. Israel's must be operating at a 20, 30. I mean, in the past, in 2014, they said they were working at 20-something percentage. I'm just surprised that we don't know what they're targeting percentage.
20 or 30% collateral. That's crazy. That's crazy. Like 3% is already pretty insane. That just means 20 to 30% of the things that they're bombing were not things that they intended to bomb. And that's just generally. That means there's like bombings were like 90% of the things that they, or maybe even 100% of the things that they didn't intend to bomb are getting bombed. Oh my gosh. Working between 20 or 30%. 20 or 30% collateral. Israel has killed more. Yeah, that's kind of wild. How Israel has killed more civilians. Wait, is that here? Let me see. I want to check that for myself. Yeah. Yeah, right now it stands at least November 2023 stands at 10,000 civilians have been killed in Ukraine. Israel has killed more civilians in Gaza than Russia has killed in Ukraine. Actually, Russia's less of a murderous state than Israel is by this one specific metric. Yeah, I know we don't know how many Ukrainians have been killed in occupied territories, and like 20% of like Ukraine is occupied right now. Yeah. Yeah, the floor right now is 10,000. People are saying the floor is 10,000. And people are saying between 10,000, I'm seeing 10,000 to 14,000. Those are the numbers I'm seeing thrown around right now. I'm not seeing any numbers that are like 20 or 30,000. Yes, I know there's no estimate. I know there's no estimate. Well, I know there's no estimate for like after they were occupied. There was an estimate for when the bombings were happening and when Russia was rolling in. Wait one moment. According to the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, there have been 26,000 civilian casualties, and that was in August. But casualties doesn't mean deaths. That just means killed and injured. I know they like bombed the whole city. But I know they bombed the whole city, but like once again, Gaza City is leveled as well. Like Gaza City is leveled by now, like right now. So yeah, I'm just not sure. We're not sure, but it's very possible that they've killed more. Are Israelis even more brainwashed than North Koreans? I have no clue because we have no information. We have no real information on North Koreans. And their possible brainwashing or like the propaganda or like all of the propaganda they've been fed. No clue. I can't make that claim. Gaza as a whole is done, isn't it? No, I wouldn't say Gaza as a whole is done. No, there's going to have to be large scale humanitarian and rebuilding efforts done to fix the problem, but no, most Gazans who were there when the war began are still there, and Palestinians and Gazans like diaspora are still there. It's just like a lot of them have died, and a lot of them will continue to die as long as the world does nothing.
In terms of, their civilian collateral damage percentages, because that would be a direct way for us to have said to them, can you just get it down to below 10%?
That is, I mean, they do, in conversation, talk about what they think their percentages are. We don't think that's good enough, and we always push them to do more.
We do know what their percentages are, though.
We know what they say they have.
Okay.
You know.
Final question from me before I move on to Brendan. During the hostilities in Gaza in 2014, your government decided to review licences for arms exports to Israel, and you committed not to grant any further licences until hostilities were ceased. I think there were 12 specific licences that you were concerned about at the time. Why has there been no review, cessation, pause, despite the fact there should be an automatic trigger that exists within the department to immediately suspend when there's a significant change on the ground?
Well, the way this works is that, as I'm sure you know, that the grant of licences is done by the Department of Trade on the advice of the Foreign Office, and the Foreign Office has to look at compliance with international humanitarian law based on an assessment of the commitment that Israel has, the capability that they have, can they actually deliver on this capability, and the compliance. And that assessment is carried out on a sort of rolling.
Here, we can say this. When it comes to confirmed deaths, in each war, there have been more confirmed deaths of Palestinians than there have been of Ukrainians so far. Which is not to say that Ukraine has suffered less, but it's to speak of the scale of destruction that Israel is leveling on Gaza. And both countries need help.
Basis, and so it is sort of permanently reviewed, and where the circumstances to change and us to reach a different view, we'd advise the Department of Trade accordingly.
The immediate handbrake that, for example, after the terrorist attack in Kosovo, there was an immediate handbrake put in place in terms of sales of arms to Serbia. There was no immediate handbrake, as I am aware of, on this situation, despite there having been an enormous terrorist attack and then a response. And there hasn't been a specific
I think it's
review
because
of
the circumstances, the circumstances are different because of October the 7th being such a hostile attack on Israel, and the government's position that Israel has a right to defend itself and a right to try and stop Hamas from launching future terrorist attacks, that there wouldn't be odd to have an automatic handbrake. What you have to do is assess on an ongoing basis, which is what we're doing.
Israel has a full right to defend itself in international humanitarian law, but the British government has a duty to ensure that its export licences are for arms exports as accurate as they can be. So you are not aware of any review within the system formally. Rolling basis, the point of a rolling basis that you have the emergency handbrake when it's needed.
Well, it's as you described. I mean,
but you put one in place, which is why I'm surprised that there hasn't been one in 2014.
Yes,
when the casualties are so much higher this time.
Well, I think what I've described is what happens, which is it's a decision for the Department of Trade based on advice from the Foreign Office, and that process is properly gone through.
Okay. I just find it strange that when there were much lower levels of hostilities and activity, you put in place one as Prime Minister, and this time round, despite the circumstances being so much more serious, there hasn't been a review.
I think I've answered the question.
Let me take a
Okay. All right. Okay. So no review for the weapons that they're giving to Israel. Not asking how they're bombing people to see if they're actually taking care to make sure that they're not just simply killing everyone. Yeah, okay. All right, buddy. This is going to be written about. You will be remembered, but not for good reasons. You will be remembered. Now, where is this? Pretty sure South Africa just posited today that Israel doesn't have a right to defend itself from people it's occupying. I'm pretty sure international law says if you are actually occupying a group of people, no, you don't actually have a air quote right to defend yourself from those people. No, actually. From what I've seen, from what I've personally seen, now I could be wrong in that, but if it is actually, if let's say it's like recognized in The Hague that Israel is occupying Gaza, then no, they don't actually have a right to defend themselves against the people that they are occupying. No. From, let's just say, like a clear-cut case of occupation. Let's just think of a random one. No, you actually don't have the right to defend yourself from those people. No, actually, you do not. The people who have the right to defend themselves would be the occupied peoples, not the occupying force. No, that is illegal. That's bombing. That's just killing people. That's not defense. It's offense. Actually, that's how that works. Okay. One thing we're gonna do here really quick. I want to switch gears to the arguments, to some of the arguments made by South Africa against Israel today. But let me try again. There we go. But it is very long, and I won't have everything to be able to. I won't be able to talk through all of it, because a lot of things that they're just going to be saying, I'm just going to have to. A lot of the stuff that they're going to say, I'm just going to have to be like so true, or that's so sad, or I can't provide like the best commentary while it's going on, and I think it'd be better to let them make their case than me constantly interjecting. So I'm going to allow them to make their case. I'm just going to chime in when needed on this. The first one I want to pull up. They shouldn't have murdered 1,200 Israelis. 800 civilians. I don't really care about soldiers dying. And also, cool. Well, Israel shouldn't commit genocide if they didn't want to be brought to The Hague. Easy. It seems pretty easy to not commit genocide, but it seems like they couldn't stop themselves from doing it. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate indeed. Calling it now Netanyahu's gonna end up getting deposed or removed again. It's very possible, yeah. Yeah. Israel has a mandatory draft. That is very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate that Israel would do that to their people then. I personally would not send my people to die, but that's just me. Shouldn't have given Hamas a chance to do it. Yeah, maybe they shouldn't have. Maybe they shouldn't have promoted Hamas to begin with. That's crazy. It's part of Israel's indoctrination too. Very unfortunate stuff going on there. Very sad, unfortunate stuff. But at the end of the day, a soldier is a soldier. Like, it's sad if like a state sends somebody out to die, but it's also sad when a state sends somebody to kill another person. That's just my opinion. Cause yeah, they probably didn't necessarily quote unquote sign up to die, but also they would have easily killed somebody that like Netanyahu told them to kill. He pointed in a direction and he'd say start firing. They would have done it. Are you in favor of one state or two state? I mean, I'm in favor of both. It just depends on. I'm not an included party, right? It depends on what those two come to an agreement with. If you want my personal opinion on what should happen, I think like the entire world should clamp down on Israel and then make an entire, like, just encircle Israel and put them in like a metaphorical like prison, right? And like just completely cut them off from the rest of the world. Give them no food, water, electricity. Do the same exact thing that they've been doing to Gaza when it comes to stopping their border, no plane flights in or out of the entire nation, complete sanctions, complete embargoes, and then just have warships on the entire coastline, complete blockade as well, just no movement in or out. And then you go to the UN and you say you're going to be working with the Palestinians to fix this issue. And also every Palestinian, the same exact law that Israel has when it comes to their right to return applies to Palestinians and Gazans as well, to the same exact area. And then and then forcing the Israeli state to step down, and forcing a complete UN occupation, and then just turning it into like a UN controlled body, that and then just flooding the place with peacemakers on like every single street, and that's just how it is. So it would be like that. Just the UN controls the entire area. Like I'm talking Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Gaza, like the whole place, the entire area, completely like filled with peacemakers, and then it's just controlled by them, and then that's just simply it. That's just how it would work. It wouldn't really necessarily be a state, or it'd just be like a UN controlled zone called like Israel Palestine or something. That's monstrous. That's millions of Israelis without basic human necessities. That's crazy. Well, like Israel should just like step down and stop bombing people, and then all the Israelis would get their necessities. That's just me though. Definitely. Is that definitely 3 or definitely IL or definitely III? Thank you, or LLL. I don't know. Thank you so much for the tier 2 subscription. That's incredibly kind of you. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. IO. Well, I don't know. Listen. Definitely IO. Yeah, I was thinking, because I was like, the first, okay, when your name came up yellow when you subscribed, it was the opposite of what it looks like now, because it's like definitely IO now, because like I can see the I, since it's smaller than the 2 L's. You think Israel's going to bomb The Hague now? Israel, after South Africa made their claims at The Hague, Israel said that South Africa's lawyers were affiliated with Hamas. Do you think that Israel's going to claim that they can bomb The Hague now? What do you guys think? I guess that is confusing. It's all right. I appreciate you for the tier 2. Thank you. What do you guys think? Everyone who was aware of Israel's behavior knew it was going to get this bad. Oh yeah, 100%. Oh yeah, 100,000%. We all knew it was going to get this bad. That's why I made a couple videos talking about it. Like this was only the start to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Palestinians being killed by Israel. It's just what they do. They're still fighting like it's the 1950s or something. But anyways, let's talk about this. I'm going to be keeping my hands busy while we watch this. All right. Give me some of this. Give me one of these. Pop. Can you see that? You can't see that yet. You cannot see that yet. You will see it here in a moment. I promise you this. You see? You see it now. It's perfect. It's perfect. There we go. Here we go. It's perfect. Who is this? I cannot pronounce her name correctly, so we're gonna let the text to speech tell you. This is
Blin Negrali.
Blin Ni Gralai. This is a lawyer for South Africa at The Hague. This is the lawyer for South Africa at The Hague for their case against Israel and their claim that they're committing genocide. She's going to be giving some arguments to The Hague. So what we're going to be listening to is some of South Africa's arguments to The Hague. This isn't going to be all of it. They got her wearing the wig. It is true they did put her in the wig. Everybody there, this is old timey, okay? I think they still even have like the they even not the guillotine. I think they still even have the gallows. You know, they still got the noose. I'm telling you, man. They're old timey. They have not changed since the 1940s. It's very sad that at the beginning, this court was hearing cases against Germany and German officials for their crimes against Jewish people. And now Israelis are being brought up for actually incredibly similar heinous crimes that they're committing against other people. That's actually really sad. It is really a full circle, right? It's incredible what far-right nationalism and brainwashing can do to an entire nation, huh? It's incredible how fear can grip an entire nation and get them to act in horrible ways. One moment. Properties filters. Okay. Oh, that looks terrible. Why did it do that? 0 contrast. Is it brightness?
This meme is very real.
I think the brightness needs to be brought down like a tiny bit. There's something wrong with the way this looks. And I'm just not sure what it is yet. There's just something wrong with the way like this looks in comparison to what I'm looking at. But I think it's good enough. We're gonna leave it there for now. Well, I don't like the way it looks. I don't like the way it looks even more now, for some reason. Oh no. The wig? You do have to wear the wig, and they make you wear the wig in the UK as well. This is The Hague, okay?
There is an urgent need for provisional measures to protect Palestinians in Gaza from the irreparable prejudice caused by Israel's violations of the Genocide Convention. The United Nations Secretary-General and its chiefs describe the situation in Gaza variously as a crisis of humanity, a living hell, a bloodbath, a situation of utter, deepening and unmatched horror, where an entire population is besieged and under attack, denied access to the essentials for survival on a massive scale. As the United Nations Under-Secretary-General for Humanitarian Affairs stated last Friday, and I quote, "Gaza has become a place of death and despair. Families are sleeping in the open as temperatures plummet. Areas where civilians were told to relocate for their safety have come under relentless bombardment. Medical facilities are under relentless attack. The few hospitals that are partially functional are overwhelmed with trauma cases, critically short of all supplies, and inundated by desperate people seeking safety. A public health disaster is unfolding. Infectious diseases are spreading in overcrowded shelters as sewers spill over. Some 180 women are giving birth daily amidst this chaos. People are facing the highest levels of food insecurity ever recorded. Famine is around the corner. For children in particular, the last 12 weeks have been traumatic. No food, no water, no school, nothing but the terrifying sounds of war day in and day out. Gaza has simply become
I've been seeing this. I've been hearing this recently. There are reports of actually children dying of heart attacks from fear of getting bombed. Actually, it's just something that there are reports of it that I've heard. There was one recently that I was reading up on a little bit today. There was I believe a kid in the US actually. Thinking about family members being bombed and having to hear about it. So this is what they're doing to people, kids specifically. It's just sick.
Uninhabitable. Its people are witnessing daily threats to their very existence, while the world watches on. End quote. The court has heard of the horrific death toll and of the more than 7,000 Palestinian men, women and children reported missing, presumed dead, or dying slow, excruciating deaths trapped under the rubble. Reports of field executions and torture and ill-treatment are mounting, as are images of decomposing bodies of Palestinian men, women and children left unburied where they were killed, some being picked upon by animals. It is becoming ever clearer that huge swathes of Gaza, entire towns, villages, refugee camps, are being wiped from the map. As you have heard, but it bears repeating, according to the World Food Programme, 4 out of 5 people in the world in famine or a catastrophic type of hunger are in Gaza right now. Indeed, experts warn that deaths from starvation and disease risk significantly outstripping deaths from bombings. The daily statistics stand as clear evidence of the urgency and of the irreparable prejudice. On the basis of the current figures, on average, 247 Palestinians are being killed and are at risk of being killed each day, many of them literally blown to pieces. They include
anti-Semitism isn't I hear somebody say anti-Semitism isn't exclusive to Jews. Anti-Semitism, as the word that you know it as, is specific to Jews. Yes, anti-Semitism in just like a colloquial way, in a way that some people may be using the word, is not specific to Jews, because Jews aren't the only Semitic people. They're not the only people that speak a Semitic language. So, like, Semitism or just Semitic basically means like people who speak a Semitic language. I believe that also includes Arabic, actually. Like, Arabs are also a Semitic people. But in the word that it was, how it's used, no, anti-Semitism does actually only refer to Jewish people. Yeah. But you can be anti-Semitic in the sense of you also don't like Arabs as well, yeah.
48 mothers each day, 2 every hour, and over 117 children each day, leading UNICEF to call Israel's actions a war on children. On current rates which show no sign of abating, each day, over 3 medics, 2 teachers, more than 1 United Nations employee, and more than 1 journalist will be killed, many while at work or in what appear to be targeted attacks on their family homes or where they are sheltering. The risk of famine will increase each day. Each day, an average of 629 people will be wounded, some multiple times over, as they move from place to place, desperately seeking sanctuary. Each day, over 10 Palestinian children will have 1 or both legs amputated, many without anaesthetic. Each day, on current rates, an average of 3,900 Palestinian homes will be damaged or destroyed. More mass graves will be dug. More cemeteries will be bulldozed and bombed and corpses violently exhumed, denying even the dead any dignity or peace. Each day, ambulances, hospitals and medics will continue to be attacked and killed. The first responders who have spent 3 months without international assistance.
This isn't even hidden information. Like, this is stuff that you can find out with just a couple Google searches as well.
To be targeted. On current figures, one will be killed almost every second day. Sometimes an attack's launched against those attending the scene to rescue the wounded. Each day, yet more desperate people will be forced to relocate from where they are sheltering, or will be bombed in places where they have been told to evacuate to. Entire multi-generational families will be...
The rate of permanently disabling injuries are horrific. Yeah, and that this isn't even just something that's war specific. Like Israeli snipers and Israeli snipers and IDF soldiers have been well known and documented to target protesters' legs, and shoot their legs. You use hollow points on their legs to be able to force them to be amputated, because the damage that those bullets do to their limbs is to the point where reconstructive surgery is simply not possible. So there's a large swath of people who are permanently disabled, specifically in their legs. And this is stuff that you can look into yourself. There's specifically people who are without legs, or at least specifically one leg in Gaza and the West Bank, that have been targeted by Israeli snipers and IDF officers for protesting against Israel near the border. Yeah, I mean, if like Israeli snipers just use children playing soccer near the border as like shooting practice, it's not really surprising that they would do that as well. Yeah, so many legs and arms gone as a result, because they specifically want to target their limbs and have them be amputated as a form of punishment and mockery.
Obliterated, and yet more Palestinian entire multi-generational families will be obliterated. Yeah,
like that guy who was getting grilled by British TV after 30 of his family members got killed by the IDF. Yeah.
More Palestinian children will become WCNSF. Wounded child, no surviving family. The terrible new acronym born out of Israel's genocidal assault on the Palestinian population in Gaza. There is an urgent need for provisional measures to prevent imminent, irreparable prejudice to the rights in issue in this case. There could not be a clearer or more compelling case. In the words of the Commissioner General of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, there must be an end to the decimation of Gaza and of its people.
I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but John Fetterman, after not reading John Fetterman, the guy who ran as a progressive, after not reading South Africa's genocide case against Israel, and after not watching the genocide case that South Africa presented to the International Justice Court, he said that South Africa should stick to their own continent and deal with that first. Like, for some reason, because South Africa is in Africa, they should like worry about African problems. He actually was like, them darkies need to deal with their own problem before they start talking to me. It's actually crazy.
Who are they really fighting? It's a group of cowards. They hide in tunnels. They hide behind civilians.
This is Fetterman.
They attack, kill, and mutilate children, women, and they do that? Stop talking about proportion on that. They shot their best shot on October 7th, and they would have taken more lives if they couldn't do that, but they couldn't do it. And now let's also talk about that. Now we're talking about genocide, and now South Africa is bringing that kind of a trial. Maybe South Africa ought to sit this one out when they're talking about criticizing.
Why? He needs to, South Africa needs to sit this one out. Why? Oh, and if you're wondering why, is because he said that South Africa is genociding white farmers. So somebody said, I'm glad he's depressed. Sheesh. Bro said, I'm glad. I'm rooting for, I'm on the war. John Fetterman's war on depression. I'm joining the war on the side of depression. Just crazy stuff. Also, South Africa is not genociding white farmers. And listen, here's the thing. John Fetterman, your Ilhan Omar is leading the world's leaders when it comes to calling for a ceasefire in Israel's war on Gaza, while he's doing literally nothing. If he cares so much, listen, I've heard this argument from massive Israel gaggers, massive Israel glazers. If you care so much, then you bring a case against South Africa to the to the International Justice Court when it comes to their handling of white. Go ahead then. Go ahead, do it if you want to. You don't care. Weirdo. We're not going to be talking about him any further because he's trying to suck up air from this incredibly well put together and devastating case that South Africa has made against Israel. We're not going to be talking about him any further here. And if you wonder why I didn't make any segments about this earlier, the number one reason is because I just don't believe that he should take any time. He's making this statement the same day that South Africa is making their case. I just don't believe that he should take any time away from their case. He's just a nobody. I hate to say it. He is nothing compared to what they're doing here.
Turning to the court's case law, as the court has recently reaffirmed, and I quote, "The condition of urgency is met when acts susceptible of causing irreparable prejudice can occur at any moment before the court makes a final decision on the case." End quote. That is precisely the situation here. Any of those matters to which I have referred can and are occurring at any moment. United Nations Security Council resolutions demanding, quote, "the immediate, safe, unhindered delivery of humanitarian assistance at scale throughout Gaza and full, rapid, safe and unhindered humanitarian access," end quote, remain unimplemented. United Nations General Assembly resolutions calling for a humanitarian ceasefire have been ignored.
Not only ignored, laughed at.
Be more urgent. Since these proceedings were initiated on the 29th of December 2023 alone, an estimated over 1,703 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza and over 3,252 injured. As to the criterion of irreparable prejudice, for decades now, the court has repeatedly found it to be satisfied in situations where serious risks arise to human life or to other fundamental rights. In the cases of Georgia, Russia, and Armenia, Azerbaijan, the court ordered provisional measures, having found a serious risk of irreparable prejudice where hundreds of thousands of people had been forced from their homes. In ordering provisional measures in the latter case, the court noted the context of, I quote, "the long-standing exposure of the population to a situation of vulnerability, including hindrances to the importation of essential goods, causing shortages of food, medicine, and other life-saving medical supplies," end quote. In Gaza, as you have heard, nearly 2 million people, over 85% of the population have been repeatedly forced to flee their homes and shelters, not just once or twice, but some 3, 4 or more times over, into shrinking slivers of land where they continue to be bombed and killed. This is a population that Israel had already made vulnerable through 16 years of military blockade and crippling de-development. Today, Israel's hindrances to the import of food and essential items have brought Gaza to the brink of famine, with adults, mothers, fathers, grandparents regularly foregoing food.
You know, this is really reminded me of one of the most kind of yes, this is the Hague hearing. One of the most jaw-dropping I guess arguments I've seen from Israeli supporters is that you can't call it genocide because there's more Gazans today than there were like 5 years ago. So they've been having this meme where they're calling it, oh, Israel's doing the worst genocide ever. This genocide sure does suck because there's so many Gazans, dude. They weren't able to kill all of them yet. And that was like, this is actually something that people are saying out there. Just worst genocide ever. They haven't killed all of them yet. So it must not be a real genocide. Okay. You belong in a mental asylum. A mental asylum. I'm telling you, man. These people genuinely, I remember like we were saying not too long ago, I was like, a lot of these people would be perfectly happy filling their cars up with like oil made from like Arab blood. Like if they just like if there was just a factory killing Arabs and if there were just cars that ran on Arab blood, these types of people would simply just be really happy to use it because they'd save money on gas. They hate these people that much. And there were some people who said it was being a little hyperbolic, but I want you to think about some of their arguments that they're using here. I genuinely believe that they don't care. They push Gazans from area that was not Gaza into Gaza. Yes, they have 100%. They have been for like decades. Yeah. And with the whole massive Gazan like or the Palestinian diaspora across the world as well. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you want to go back that far, then go back to 1948. You're going to look for where's the massive drop in Gazans? Bro, go back to 1948. I think you'll find it. Brother, I think you'll find it. Let's play some more.
For the day, so that children can eat at least something. Medicine shortages and the lack of medical treatment, clean water and electricity are so great that large numbers of Palestinians are dying or are at imminent risk of dying preventable deaths. Cancer and other services have long shut down. Women are undergoing cesarean sections without anaesthetic in barely functioning hospitals, described as scenes from a horror movie, with many undergoing otherwise unnecessary hysterectomies in an attempt to save their lives. In the Canada-Syria torture case, the court made clear that, I quote, individuals subject to torture and other acts of cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment are at serious risk of irreparable prejudice. Well, Palestinians in Gaza are also at risk of such irreparable prejudice, with videos of Palestinian boys and men rounded up and stripped and degraded broadcast to the world.
Yeah, like them forcing them to sing songs.
Serious mental harm and humiliation. In Qatar, United Arab Emirates, the court considered provisional measures to be justified, having regard to the risk of irreparable prejudice deriving from factors such as people being forced to leave their places of residence without the possibility of return, the psychological distress of temporary or potentially ongoing separation from their families, and the harm associated with students being prevented from taking their exams. If provisional measures were justified there, how could they not be in Gaza, where countless families have been separated, with some family members evacuating under Israeli military orders and others staying behind at extreme risk to care for the wounded, infirm and the elderly, where husbands, fathers and sons are being rounded up and separated from their families, taken to unknown locations for indeterminate periods of time. In the Qatar case, the court issued a provisional order where
no insulin, no medicine.
150 students was an issue.
People are dying of renal failure.
625,000 school children have not attended school for 3 months, with the United Nations Security Council expressing deep concern.
Israel's even bombed UN schools. The UN knows what's going on.
Dramatic impact on children, and that conflict has lifelong effects on their physical and mental health. Almost 90,000 Palestinian university students cannot attend at university in Gaza. Over 60% of schools, almost all universities, and countless bookshops and libraries have been damaged or destroyed, and hundreds of teachers and academics have been killed, including deans of universities and leading Palestinian scholars, obliterating the very prospects for the future education of Gaza's children and young people. Notably, the court...
A whole generation is going to have to rebuild from the ground up.
All 3 cases where they were previously sought in relation to violations of the Genocide Convention. It did so in Bosnia and Serbia in 1993, finding on the basis of evidence that was certainly no more compelling than that presently before the court, that it was sufficient to determine that there was, and I quote, a grave risk of acts of genocide being committed. The court found provisional measures to be justified in the Gambia-Myanmar case on the basis of a risk of irreparable prejudice to the Rohingya, subject to, quote, mass killings as well as beatings, the destruction of villages and homes, denial of access to food, shelter, and other essentials of life. More recently, in indicating provisional measures in Ukraine-Russia, the court considered that Russia's military activities had, quote, resulted in numerous civilian deaths and injuries and caused significant material damage, including the destruction of buildings and infrastructure, end quote, giving rise to a risk of irreparable prejudice. The court had regard to the fact that, quote, attacks are ongoing and are creating increasingly difficult living conditions for the civilian population, end quote, which it considered to be extremely vulnerable. The court also considered the fact that, I quote again, many persons have no access to the most basic foodstuffs, potable water, electricity,
is foodstuffs a real word?
Heating, and that many were attempting to flee under extremely insecure conditions.
These people bomb refugees.
Gaza,
Red Crescent.
On a much more intensive scale, to a besieged, trapped, terrified population that has nowhere safe to go. Lest the contrary be suggested, it is clear from Ukraine-Russia that the fact that the urgent risk of irreparable harm arises in a situation of armed conflict does not undermine, much less preclude, a request for provisional measures. That's also clear from the court's other judgments. So in the case of armed activities on the territory of the Congo, for example, the court ordered provisional measures based on its finding that, quote, persons, assets and resources present on the territory of the Congo, particularly in the area of conflict, remain extremely vulnerable, and that there was a serious risk that rights at issue in the case may suffer irreparable prejudice, end quote. Similarly, in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, the court indicated provisional measures in part on the basis that the presence of troops in the disputed territory gave rise, I quote, to a real and present risk of incidents liable to cause irremediable harm in the form of bodily injury or death, end quote. In relation to the Genocide Convention in particular, the Court...
I want to hear that one more time.
In Costa Rica, Nicaragua, the Court indicated provisional measures in part on the basis that the presence of troops in the disputed territory gave rise, I quote, to a real and present risk of incidents liable to cause irremediable harm in the form of bodily injury or death, end quote. In relation to the Genocide Convention in particular, the Court recalled in Gambia, Myanmar, that, quote, states parties expressly confirmed their willingness to consider genocide as a crime under international law, which they must prevent and punish independently of the context of peace or of war in which it takes place, end quote.
Thank you.
More recently,
oh my gosh.
in the case of Guyana, Venezuela,
people basically saying, oh, the genocide's fine. Remember October 7th. It doesn't matter.
And exercising control and administration of the territory in dispute. And
killing is bad, no matter who's doing it.
To a risk of irreparable prejudice to the rights asserted in the case. Similar factors are an issue here, having regard to the territorial ambitions and settlement plans for Gaza being raised by members of the Israeli government, and the relationship of those factors to the very survival of Palestinians in Gaza.
Finally, bringing up those claims to occupy, level Gaza, turn into a parking lot, and then have Israelis move in.
Humanitarian relief to Gaza in response to these proceedings or otherwise would be no answer to South Africa's request for provisional measures. In the case of Iran, United States, the Court found a risk of irreparable harm from the exposure of individuals to danger to health and life caused by restrictions placed on medicines and medical devices, foodstuffs and other goods required for humanitarian needs.
Oh, look at the U.S. supporting not giving medicine to civilians again. Oh, what a surprise.
To expedite the consideration of humanitarian issues, and notwithstanding the fact that essentials were in any event exempt from the United States sanctions. The Court considered that the assurances were, I quote, not adequate to address fully the humanitarian and safety concerns raised, and that there remained a risk that measures adopted by the United States may entail irreparable consequences. In Armenia,
we don't even give medicine to our own people.
Undertakings to alleviate restrictions alongside the full resumption of humanitarian and commercial deliveries did not defeat requests for the indication of provisional measures. The Court was clear that while contributing, quote, towards mitigating the imminent risk of irreparable prejudice resulting from the military operation, those developments did not remove the risk entirely. Indeed, in Georgia, Russia, the Court made clear that it considers a serious risk to subsist where, quote, the situation is unstable and could rapidly change. The Court considered, quote, given the ongoing tension and the absence of an overall settlement to the conflict in this region, populations also remain vulnerable, end quote. Israel continues to deny that it is responsible for the humanitarian crisis it has created, even as Gaza starves. The aid it has belatedly begun to allow in is wholly inadequate and does not come anywhere close to the average 500 trucks being permitted daily before October 2023, even under the blockade. Any unilateral undertaking
150 when it should be 500, just for no reason,
would not remove the risk of irreparable prejudice, not least considering Israel's past and current conduct towards the Palestinian people, including the 16 years of brutal siege on Gaza. In any event, as the United Nations Secretary-General has made absolutely clear, It is a mistake to measure, quote, the effectiveness of the humanitarian operation in Gaza based on the number of trucks allowed in. As he stressed, I quote, the real problem is that the way Israel is conducting this offensive means that the conditions for the effective delivery of humanitarian aid no longer exist. That would require security, staff who can work in safety, logistical capacity, and the resumption of commercial activity. It requires electricity and steady communications. All of these remain absent, end quote. Indeed, only shortly after Israel opened the Kerem Shalom crossing to goods in late December 2023, it was struck in a drone attack, killing 5 Palestinians and leading to another temporary closure. Nowhere and nobody.
Open up the border, bomb the border. So now you have to close the border again. That's crazy how that works.
All its chiefs have made clear. Without a halt to Israel's military operations, crossings, aid convoys and humanitarian workers, like everyone and everything else in Gaza, remain at imminent risk of further irreparable prejudice. An unprecedented 148 United Nations staff have been killed to date.
148 UN staff.
To Israel's military
I didn't even know that. They killed 200 UN staff.
To the extreme situation facing Palestinian civilians.
If UN staff can't even be safe, who can?
If the indication of provisional measures was justified on the facts in those cases I have cited, how could it not be here, in a situation of much greater severity, where the imminent risk of irreparable harm is so much greater? How could they not be justified in a situation that humanitarian veterans from crises spanning as far back as the killing fields of Cambodia, people who, in the words of the United Nations Secretary-General, have seen everything, if they say it is so utterly unprecedented that they are out of words to describe it? It would be a complete departure from the long and established line of jurisprudence that this court has firmly established and recently reconfirmed for the court not to order provisional measures in this case. The imminent risk of death, harm and destruction that Palestinians in Gaza face today and that they risk every day during the pendency of these proceedings, on any view justifies, indeed compels, the indication of provisional measures. Some might say that the very reputation of international law, its ability and willingness to bind and to protect all peoples equally, hangs in the balance. But
this is just an Irish lawyer.
Is about much more than
Ireland is not a part of this case.
It is also fundamentally about the confirmation and endorsement of elementary principles of morality. The court recalled the 1946 General Assembly resolution on the crime of genocide, which made clear that, I quote, genocide is a denial of the right of existence of entire human groups, as homicide is the denial of the right to live of individual human beings. Such denial of the right of existence shocks the conscience of mankind, results in great losses to humanity in the form of cultural and other contributions represented by these human groups, and is contrary to moral law and to the spirit and aims of the United Nations, end quote. Failed again by ignoring the early warnings of the grave risk of genocide to the Palestinian people, sounded by international experts since 19th of October of last year. The international community continues to fail the Palestinian people, despite the overt, dehumanizing, genocidal rhetoric by Israeli governmental and military officials, matched by the Israeli army's actions on the ground. Despite the horror of the genocide against the Palestinian people being live-streamed from Gaza to our mobile phones, computers and television screens, the first genocide in history where its
to be
victims
recorded.
are broadcasting their own destruction in real time, in the desperate, so
And the
far
perpetrators are
vain hope
recording their
that the
own
world
crimes.
might do something. Gaza represents nothing short of a moral failure, as described by the usually circumspect International Committee of the Red Cross. As underscored by United Nations chiefs, that failure has, I quote, repercussions not just for the people of Gaza, but for the generations to come who will never forget these over 90 days of hell and assaults on the most basic precepts of humanity. As stated by a United Nations spokesperson in Gaza last week,
one moment. M, thank you so much for the super chat. $4.99. Biden just blew up Yemen. Yeah, I heard something about talks of a possible strike in Yemen. Let's see. The US and British launched strikes against targets in Houthi-controlled Yemen. Yep. Justice Biden said, I would praise Biden for getting rid of the drone war and the foreign airstrikes. He decides to bring them back on possibly his last year of being president. Nice one.
Dark hog.
Good job, buddy. Free Palestine. Thank you so much, Stitch. I really appreciate you for the 25 months. Biden releases he releases statement on the military strikes in Yemen. Can't watch that at the moment. I want to finish this.
the site of a hospital clearly marked with the symbol of the Red Crescent, where 5 Palestinians, including a 5-day-old baby, had just been killed. The world should be absolutely horrified. The world should be absolutely outraged. There is no safe space in Gaza, and the world should be ashamed. Madam President, members of the Court, in conclusion, I share with you 2 photographs. The first is of a whiteboard at a hospital in northern Gaza, one of the many Palestinian hospitals targeted, besieged and bombed by Israel over the course of the past 3 brutal months. The whiteboard is wiped clean of no longer possible surgical cases, leaving only a handwritten message by a Médecins Sans Frontières doctor which reads, "We did what we could. Remember us." The second photograph is of the same whiteboard after an Israeli strike on the hospital on the 21st of November that killed the author of the message, Dr. Mahmoud Abu Nujayla, along with 2 of his colleagues. Just over a month later, in a powerful sermon delivered from a church in Bethlehem on Christmas Day, the same day Israel had killed 250 Palestinians, including at least 86 people, many from the same family, massacred in a single strike on Maghazi refugee camp. Palestinian pastor Mundhir Ishaq addressed his congregation and the world, and he said, and I quote, "Gaza as we know it no longer exists. This is an annihilation. This is a genocide. We will rise. We will stand up again from the midst of destruction, as we have always done as Palestinians, though this is by far maybe the biggest blow we have received." But he said, "No apologies will be accepted after the genocide. What has been done has been done. I want you to look in the mirror and ask, where was I when Gaza was going through a genocide?" South Africa is here, before this court, in the Peace Palace. It has done what it could. It is doing what it can by initiating these proceedings, by seeking interim measures against itself as well as against Israel. South Africa now respectfully and humbly calls on this honourable court to do what is in its power to do, to indicate the provisional measures that are so urgently required to prevent further irreparable harm to the Palestinian people in Gaza, whose hopes, including for their very survival, are now vested in this court.
What a fantastic speech. Powerful, harrowing, incredible. I barely know what else to say about it than that. In response to this, Israel just said that South Africa is just affiliated with Hamas and they're Hamas's lawyers. That's all they really said, is that they are working for Hamas, and that's basically it. That's their only response right now. Tomorrow should be their formal response to the claims in the court. So they might have something more to say, but at this moment, that's the only thing they have to say. Hamas equals everything. Hamas, yeah, is everything that they don't like. Trump is Hamas. That's crazy. Mar-a-Lago might be a target for Israel. But that's not everything. There is one more speech that I want to hear. And this is the one where he goes through at least some of the claims, at least some of the statements by Israeli nationals and Israeli government officials when it comes to what their plans are in Gaza that they've been just broadcasting to the world. So if I can pull this one up for you. There you are.
Madam President and distinguished members of the court, it is a privilege to appear before the court on behalf of South Africa. I will address Israel's genocidal intent. At this stage, the court is not required to determine that the only inference to be drawn from the available evidence is genocidal to order provisional measures, as that is to decide the merits. Rather, the assessment of the existence of an intent to destroy could be made by the court only at the stage of the examination of the merits. That some of the alleged acts may also amount to atrocities other than genocide does not exclude the finding of plausible acts of genocide. Madam President, South Africa is not alone in drawing attention to Israel's genocidal rhetoric against Palestinians in Gaza. 15 United Nations special rapporteurs and 21 members of the United Nations working groups have warned that what is happening in Gaza reflects a genocide in the making and an overt intent to destroy the Palestinian people under occupation. Israel has a genocidal intent against the Palestinians in Gaza. That is evident from the way in which Israel's military attack is being conducted, which has been described by Ms. Hassim SC. It is systematic in its character and form. The mass displacement of the population of Gaza, headed into areas where they continue to be killed, and the deliberate creation of conditions that, quote, lead to a slow death, unquote. There is also the clear pattern of conduct, the targeting of family homes and civilian infrastructure, laying waste to vast areas of Gaza, and the bombing, shelling, and sniping of men, women, and children where they stand, the destruction of the health infrastructure, and lack of access to humanitarian assistance. So much so that as we stand today, 1% of the Palestinian population in Gaza has been systematically decimated since 7 October. These two elements alone are capable of evidencing Israel's genocidal intent in relation to the whole or part of the Palestinian population in Gaza. However, third, there is an extraordinary feature in this case, that Israel's political leaders, military commanders, and persons holding official positions have systematically and in explicit terms declared their genocidal intent. And these statements are then repeated by soldiers on the ground in Gaza as they engage in the destruction of Palestinians and the physical infrastructure of Gaza. We show this third element next. Israel's special genocidal intent is rooted in the belief that, in fact, the enemy is not just the military wing of Hamas, or indeed Hamas generally, but is embedded in the fabric of Palestinian life in Gaza. On 7 October, in a televised address, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared war on Gaza, and I quote, "Israel had started clearing out the communities that have been infiltrated by terrorists." And he warned of an unprecedented price to be paid by the enemy. There are more than 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. Israel is the occupying power in control of Gaza. It controls entry, exit, and the internal movements of inside Gaza. And qua Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu exercises overall command over the Israeli Defense Force and, in turn, the Palestinians in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu, in his address to the Israeli forces on 28 October 2023, preparing for the invasion of Gaza, urged the soldiers to remember what Amalek has done to you.
Not the Amalek. Here we go.
This refers to the biblical command by God to Saul for the retaliatory destruction of an entire group of people known as the Amalekites. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. The genocidal invocation to Amalek was anything but idle. It was repeated by Mr. Netanyahu in a letter to the Israeli Armed Forces on 3 November 2023.
Many in the armed forces specifically quoted it.
The Prime Minister's words speak for themselves.
Done to you, says our Holy Bible, and we do remember and we are fighting our brave troops and combatants who are now in Gaza or around Gaza. And
something happened.
Let the Prime Minister's words speak for themselves.
Has done to you, says our Holy Bible, and we do remember and we are fighting our brave troops and combatants who are now in Gaza or around Gaza. And
it looks like there's a problem for us hearing it. It seemed like they could hear it in court, but we can't see it.
The Deputy Speaker of the Knesset, Israel's parliament, has called for the erasure of the Gaza Strip from the face of the earth. The Defense Force agrees. On 9 October, the Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, gave a situation update to the army, where he said that as Israel was imposing a complete siege on Gaza, there would be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything would be closed because Israel is fighting human animals. Speaking to troops on the Gaza border, he instructed them that he has released all the restraints and that Gaza won't return to what it was before. We will eliminate everything. We will reach all places. Eliminate everything. Reach all places without any restraints. The theme of destruction of human animals was reiterated by an Israeli army coordinator of government activities in the territories on 9 October 2023, who, in an address to Hamas and the residents of Gaza, stated that Hamas has become ISIS and that the citizens of Gaza are celebrating instead of being horrified. He concluded that human animals are dealt with accordingly. Israel has imposed a total blockade on Gaza. No electricity, no water, just damage. You wanted hell, you will get hell. The language of systematic dehumanization is evident here. Human animals. Both Hamas and civilians are condemned. Within the Israeli cabinet, this is also a widely held view. The Minister of Energy and Infrastructure, Israel Katz, called for the denial of water and fuel, as this is what will happen to a people of children killers and slaughterers. This admits of no ambiguity. It means to create conditions of death of the Palestinian people in Gaza. To die a slow death because of starvation and dehydration, or to die quickly because of a bomb attack or snipers, but to die nevertheless. In fact, Heritage Minister Amichai Eliyahu said that Israel must find ways for Gazans that are more painful than death. It is no answer to say that neither are in command of the army. They are ministers in the Israeli government. They vote in the Knesset and are in a position to shape state policy. The intent to destroy Gaza has been nurtured at the highest levels of state, as President Isaac Herzog has joined the ranks of those signing bombs destined for Gaza. Having previously noted that the entire population in Gaza is responsible and that this rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved is absolutely not true, we will fight until we break their backbone. Later attempts by the President and others to neutralize this speech have not altered the sting of his words, which was to tar all Palestinians as responsible for the actions of Hamas. Nor, as I will show below, has it affected how state policy is understood within government. The Minister of National Security repeated the President's statements that Hamas and civilians are responsible in equal measure. On 10 November 2023, in a televised interview, he stated that when we say that Hamas should be destroyed, it also means those who celebrate, those who support, and those who hand out candy. They are all terrorists, and they should also be destroyed. These are orders to destroy and to maim what cannot be destroyed. These statements are not open to neutral interpretations or after-the-fact rationalizations and reinterpretations by Israel. The statements were made by persons in command of the state. They communicated state policy. It is simple. If the statements were not intended, they would not have been made. The genocidal intent behind these statements is not ambiguous to the Israeli soldiers on the ground. Indeed, it is directing their actions and objectives. On 7 December 2023, Israeli soldiers proved that they understood the Prime Minister's message to remember what the Amalek has done to you as genocidal. They were recorded by journalists dancing and singing. We know our motto, there are no uninvolved, that they obey one commandment, to wipe off the seed of Amalek. The Prime Minister's invocation of Amalek is being used by soldiers to justify the killing of civilians, including children. These are the soldiers repeating the inciting words of their Prime Minister.
To wipe the seed of Amalek. We know our slogan. There are no uninvolved civilians. They literally made a genocide dance.
Israeli soldiers in Gaza were filmed dancing, chanting, and singing in November. May their village burn, may Gaza be erased. There is now a trend among the soldiers to film themselves committing atrocities against civilians in Gaza in a form of snuff video. One recorded himself detonating over 50 houses in Shujaiya. Other soldiers were recorded singing, "We will destroy all of Khan Yunis and this house. We will blow it up for you and for everything you do for us." These are the soldiers putting into effect their command.
שכונת סג'אעיה ז"ל, נחל עוז, בעזרת השם יהיה לכם. חטיבה 828, אומרת סג'אעיה שלום. בתים, 30 בתים, גדוד 749. כאן התחיל הניצחון. עם ישראל חי.
The commanders of the army are also of the same mind. Israeli army commander Yair Ben David has stated that the army had done in Beit Hanon and did there as Shimon and Levi did in Nablus, and that the entire Gaza should resemble Beit Hanon. Israeli soldier Yeshai Shalev published a video against the backdrop of the ruins of what was the site of Al-Azhar University with the caption, "Once upon a time, there was a university in Gaza, and in practice, a school for murderers and human animals." Soldiers obviously believe that this language and their actions are acceptable because the destruction of Palestinian life in Gaza is articulated state policy. Senior political and military officials encouraged without censure the 95-year-old Israeli army reservist Ezra Yachin, a veteran of the Deir Yassin massacre against the Palestinians in 1948, to speak to the soldiers ahead of the ground invasion in Gaza. In his tour, he echoed the same sentiment while being driven around in an officially Israeli army vehicle, dressed in Israeli army fatigue. I quote, "Be triumphant and finish them off, and don't leave anyone behind. Erase the memory of them. Erase them, their families, mothers and children.
Their families, mothers
can no
and
longer
children.
live. If you have an Arab neighbor, don't wait, go to his home and shoot him."
Holy
we want
shit.
to invade, not like before. We want to enter and destroy what's in front of us, and destroy houses, then destroy the one after it. With all of our forces, complete destruction, enter and destroy. As you can see, we will witness things we've never dreamed of. Let them drop bombs on them and erase them. As recently as 7 January 2024, a video of a soldier was posted online where he boasts that the army had destroyed the entire village of Hibat Azar. For 2 weeks, he said, they had worked hard to bomb the village and executed their mandate. Any suggestion that senior politicians did not mean what they said, much less that the meaning was not understood by soldiers in Gaza, would be without any merit. The scale of destruction in Gaza, the mass targeting of family homes and civilians, the war being a war on children, all make clear that genocidal intent is both understood and is being put into practice. The articulated intent is the destruction of Palestinian life in all its manifestations. The genocidal rhetoric is also commonplace within the Israeli Knesset.
This is stuff that every single nation on earth has known, but none has cared to actually bring up a case against Israel on this whole time, just so you know.
Flattened, erased, and crushed on all its inhabitants. They have deplored anyone feeling sorry for the uninvolved Gazans, asserting repeatedly that there are no uninvolved, that there are no innocents in Gaza, that the killers of the women and children should not be separated from the citizens of Gaza, and that the children of Gaza have brought this upon themselves, and that there should be one sentence for everyone there, death. Finally, the lawmakers have called for mercilessly bombing from the air, with some advocating for the use of nuclear doomsday weapons, and a Nakba that will overshadow the Nakba of 48. The Prime Minister's genocidal speech has gained ground among some elements of civil society. A famous singer has repeated Mr. Netanyahu's Amalek reference, stating that Gaza must be wiped out and be destroyed with every Amalek seed. We simply must destroy all of Gaza and exterminate everyone who is there. Another has called to erase Gaza, not leave a single person there. Journalists and commentators have announced that the woman is an enemy, the baby is an enemy, the pregnant woman is an enemy. That it is necessary to turn the strip into a slaughterhouse, to demolish every house our soldiers come across, exterminate everyone. The intentional failure of the government of Israel to condemn, prevent, and punish such genocidal incitement constitutes in itself a grave violation of the Genocide Convention.
They praise it.
We should recall, Madam President, that in Article 1 of the Convention, Israel confirmed that genocide, whether committed in time of peace or in time of war, is a crime under international law. And it undertook to prevent and to punish it as such. This failure to prevent, condemn, and punish such speech by the government has served to normalize genocidal rhetoric and extreme danger for Palestinians within Israeli society. As MK Moshe Sada from the Likud party has said, the government's own attorneys share his views that Palestinians in Gaza must be destroyed. I quote, "You go anywhere and they tell you to destroy them. In the kibbutz, they tell you to destroy them. My friends at the state attorney's office who fought with me on political issues in debate said to me, it is clear that we need to destroy all Gazans. Destroy all Gazans." Israel is aware of its destruction of Palestinian life and infrastructure. Despite this knowledge, it has maintained and indeed intensified its military activity in Gaza. As to full awareness, in the week after 7 October, NGOs and the United Nations warned of an unprecedented humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The UN stated that actors must allow humanitarian teams and goods to immediately and safely reach the hundreds of thousands of people in need. So right from the beginning, Israel knew that it was depriving water, food, electricity, and essentials for survival. It said so. Everything is closed. It has known that it was depriving Palestinians of health care and treatment for injury in the middle of an unprecedented bombardment, of food and water, and of other essentials for survival. This prompted the World Health Organization to say, "We are on our knees asking for sustained, scaled-up, protected humanitarian operations, appealing to all those in a situation to make a decision or influence decision makers to give us the humanitarian space to address this human catastrophe."
Just so you, all of this, and we're not even talking about the illegal weapons, the weapons that have been banned in the Geneva Convention that Israel has used against Gaza. How they bombed hospitals with white phosphorus. This isn't even, we're not even talking about that yet. And this is how bad the case is against Israel right now.
Despite this—
oh, did we F? What happened? Did we drop more frames? Oh, it must have been Twitch. Twitch does that sometimes.
This knowledge, Israel continues to target infrastructure essential for survival. Water and sanitation infrastructure, solar panels, bakeries, mills, crops. It bombs hospitals, decimating the healthcare system. It targets aid workers and the infrastructure of the United Nations. It is because of the policy of Israel that Gaza has become a place of death and despair. In conclusion, Madam President, many propagators of grave atrocities have protested that they were misunderstood, that they did not mean what they said, and that their own words were taken out of context. What state would admit to a genocidal intent? Yet, the distinctive feature of this case has not been the silence as such, but the reiteration and repetition of genocidal speech throughout every sphere of state in Israel. We remind the court of the identity and authority of the genocidal inciters: the Prime Minister, the President, the Minister of Defense, the Minister of National Security, the Minister of Energy and Infrastructure, members of the Knesset, senior army officials, and foot soldiers. Genocidal utterances are therefore not out in the fringes. They are embodied in state policy. The intent to destroy
it's now woven into the fabric of Israeli life
soldiers
now.
On the ground. It is also fully understood by some within the Israeli society, with the government facing criticism for allowing in any aid to Gaza on the basis that—
so those are some of the two biggest damning cases against presented by South Africa right now against Israel. The level of killing is intensive. It's extensive. This is what I can show you right now, because I can't show you some of the stuff that's I can't even show you some of the stuff going on I can't even show you some of the stuff going on in the case because they bring up pictures and images of dead Palestinians that it makes it impossible for me to be able to show you that the type of stuff that they're displaying on screen. What Israel is doing to these people is something that I can't even show you. And honestly, I'm not even sure if I necessarily want to show you it, at least in this format. It's just, I'd have to prepare you for stuff like that because it's just so evil. Like it's hard for me to give it another word. It's simply evil what they're doing to these people. absolutely horrific. Yeah. So chat, tell me some of your feelings on the matter. How do you feel at the moment? Bad. Feel rage. Depression, really? I'm really interested to see how Israel is going to like speeches. It's really easy to do stuff like that, but now they have to argue their case in court. They may just simply not care to argue a real case in court. They may not even argue that they may not argue even a real case in court and just maybe like suck my dick, fuck you, honestly. And at the end of the day, they can actually do that. I'm personally not aware of the apparatus that the ICJ has to actually hold Israel accountable for any of this. It seems like they just don't. They don't have that unless they surrender themselves to it. But I don't see why they would. I don't see why they wouldn't just kill every Gazan and then just pretend like nothing happened. But all right, let's take this. So this is some of the cases so far. We can watch a little bit more of it, but we can separate this out a little bit. Right now, I've been hearing a lot of reports. I've been hearing so many reports recently of the US bombing Yemen. I guess we can look at some updates into that. I did say we'd look at other stories too. Let's see. I thought I accidentally muted myself again. Just see what we got. I want to see if I have anything crazy here. It's Al Jazeera. Is Biden about to get us into a war with Yemen? Biden. Okay. I have a question. What gain does the US have with siding with Israel constantly, even way back in the day when Israel was purposely attacking our ally ship and the US covered it up? I don't know about literally everything, but here's the thing. Just generally, Israel is a country aligned with the US, our interests on many things. A lot of US citizens are there. Israel allows us to park our ships, our warships in the harbors of their country. We have military bases there. We launch attacks from other countries that can originate from Israel. It's a base of operation. It's an allied partner in the region. We get something from them, which is like being able to park our ships there, have military bases there, have a foothold in the Middle East, because basically no other country is going to allow us to have a foothold in the Middle East after everything we've done to the Middle East, except for Israel. And it's similar when it comes to Saudi Arabia. We have similar goals with Saudi Arabia, which is Saudi Arabia wants money and weapons, and we want oil, right? And that's why we're aligned in some reason, in some ways. So obviously, anything that jeopardizes Israel's world stage and power jeopardizes our power on the world stage as well. When it comes to the ability for us to do anything in the Middle East, and when it comes to all of that, so obviously we'd want to defend Israel from a geopolitical standpoint in that way, no matter what they really do, because it doesn't really matter as long as they keep giving us what they want to get. And it's a similar thing when it comes to Israel as Saudi Arabia, like our goals with Saudi Arabia, right? But Israel doesn't give us oil. I don't think Israel really produces that much, honestly, but they give us that foothold in the Middle East, plainly, and we give them weapons. You know, we've given them the Iron Dome, we've given them planes and ships and guns and all of this type of stuff, and they have so much money funneled from DC into Tel Aviv that there's just no real reason for them to not want to have our backs with everything, and we have their backs with just about everything as much as we can, right? Until it becomes an untenable position on the world stage. But since we're so powerful, we can just make a tenable position for them on the world stage in many ways. Not permanently and not forever and not with everything, right? Like if Israel started dropping nukes on random countries, then obviously we wouldn't be able to defend. Well, we could technically, but we wouldn't really defend them in that for several reasons. Well, maybe not. It really depends. I don't know. Maybe Biden would. All right. Let's see. Thank you, Shark. Very cool. Thank you. All right. Little thing. Little read up here. Because I'm not fully educated on the Houthis right now. I'm still doing my geopolitical learning, so we can do a little bit of we can do like broad geopolitical learning at this moment. All right. Let's learn a little something. In short, they suck. The Houthis. Yeah. I know that much, but I should know a little bit more. Since mid-November, the Houthis, a Yemen rebel group backed by Iran, have launched dozens of attacks on ships sailing through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, a critical shipping route through which 12% of the world's trade passes. Now, I did see this. This is something that's super crazy, is that right now, the Houthis have launched so many attacks and have threatened the Suez Canal and the Red Sea so bad to the point where a lot of ships, not every ship, but a lot of ships are now deciding to just sail around the entirety of Africa to get to places like the US, England, the Mediterranean Sea, instead of going through like the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. It's crazy to do that type of stuff. It takes so much energy and power and money and time to do that type of stuff. And it's causing a real problem when it comes to the world stage, where prices are going up in some regions specifically because of that. Now, it's not like huge as far as I've seen so far, but yeah, it keeps happening. The stream's shutting out on our end. Here, let me try something. I'll be right back. I'm going to try something super duper